hop on over to the science and technology camera. Look, we now have two cameras. You can see me and you can see the table. So you see a variety of parts laid out here in front of me. Starting from the left, we have our helping hands, which hopefully they okay. Looks like I'm missing a hand, so we're gonna call it the helping hand for now. We have a pack of Sugru moldable glue putty. This is a small helping of silicone putty that you can mold for about 30 minutes before it starts to cure and harden. So you get about 30 minutes of working time before it starts to set. I wish they had like a colorless that didn't have a pigment, because this pigment stuff that they have in here, that gets all over your fingers. So we are going to have some very colorful fingers tonight. We have a third-party Super Nintendo Controller Extension Cable here. This is just a generic one that you buy off of Amazon. It came in a 2-pack, so we got one here. Typical, dollar store lighter. Lights up. This is the bread and butter of the operation. This is an Arduino, or more specifically, it is an Adafruit Metro Mini 16 megahertz and 5-volt board. This is Arduino-Uno-compatible, which is what we need to make this work. The software that will be the firmware that will be running on it is based on you can have your cam back as soon as I'm done with that. This is just for the night. So this is an Arduino Uno compatible board. The firmware that will be running on it is based on the Arduino Uno board, and that is about $20. This is about $12.50 when you buy them. So it's a little bit, and it's a lot smaller. The other one is about credit card size, Raspberry Pi size. This one, it fits in a gum tin. We have a few wires that we'll be using to help make our connections, some shrink tube to cover up the wires once we're done soldering them. We have another part from Adafruit. This is a Altoids gum tin replica. The Altoids gum tin is very popular in the micro computing modding community, that they commission their own gum tin. So you can use these for various projects. Yes, it is aluminum. I've already pre-drilled some holes in here. Just a couple holes, one for the USB port and a couple for our holes to go through, or for our cords to go through. So we have that. We have our tools. We have our wire strippers and wire cutters. These are flush snips. They are flush snips because they have a edge that it will cut flush on. And we have our soldering, our solder. Just a reminder, this is 6040 rosin core solder, so it does have lead in it. It is a mixture of lead and tin. The fumes are toxic and can cause harm, so be sure to use it in a well-ventilated area, or have a filtered fan running to suck up the bad fumes. We also have our soldering iron. This is still the same soldering iron and still the same tip. The tips that I purchased in hopes of replacing this one turned out to be for a much bigger connector, and so didn't fit in this. So I've redone the tip. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of soldering to do today, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I want to get this plugged in here real quick, and we can get that warmed up while we prepare. So this is not just a hardware operation, this is also a software operation. And there's a couple things you will need to download on your own in order to get this going. Sorry, pulling up the thing here. And ta-da, there it is. Okay. So first you will need to download the Arduino IDE software. Now if you are on Windows, you can get it from the Windows 10 store. You will also need to download the zip file. The zip file is important because it contains the drivers needed for your computer to read this as a serial port. Oh, sorry. To read this Arduino board as a serial port. That's how your computer is going to read it for the input reader software. You'll also need to download the latest release of Nintendo Spy from their GitHub page. A quick search of the word Nintendo Spy will lead you to their GitHub page. Like they said, they use an Arduino-Uno board, but we're using an Uno-compatible board, the Metro Mini. We have tested it and made sure it works. Inside of the zip file of the latest is the Nintendo Spy software and the skins that you'll be using to display the inputs. So once you download and open up the Nintendo Spy software, get your Pi connected, or I'm sorry, get your Arduino connected, wired in, connected to your Super Nintendo. You'll make sure you select the right COM port for your Arduino and hit go. And you will get a controller window. And that will light up with whatever buttons you press. You can also get different skins for it and make it your own. So, just want to show you real quick. I have went ahead and made one already. So you can see inside of here, we have the Arduino. We have the wires all put together. And I decided to make it short on the female end where the controller plugs into. So that way this can be a little bit of ways away from the console. And because my console and my PC are not near each other, that makes it so I don't have to have such a long USB cable to get to the computer. So this has been run through, it tested, it works. We've already done a stream with it. We know everything is hunky-dory. All right, so iron's heating up. This is ready to go. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first we want to take our controller cable and we want to cut it in half. Well, not exactly half. We want to give it, a little bit of slack on one side. So we're going to go with about a foot. So that's about 6 and that's about 12. So right here at this bend, we're going to give it a good snip. And snip. One thing I did not grab, but you will probably want to definitely want to on yours, is a multimeter. Or at least a continuity tester of some sort. A continuity tester, for those not in the know, feeds a electronic signal, usually just, a little electronic pulse, down one end of a wire, and looks for that signal on the other end of the wire. And you connect the two leads to the two ends that should be seeing each other, such as a pin here and a pin here, the same pin. And if the continuity tester beeps at you, you know that they're connected. You'll want to do that to make sure that the connections are good, because if a connection is bad, well, things won't work. So I want to cut back some of the wiring, the cable sheath here, to expose the wires. All right, there should be 5 wires minimum inside of your cable. If there is not, you probably have a bad cable. because there is 5 wires that the Super Nintendo uses to control its inputs. The 5 wires that are used are ground, 5 volts, the clock, the latch, and the data pins, or wires. If you do a cursory search for SNES pinout or SNES controller pinout, you will be able to find those quite handedly. So I have already done this ahead of time, so I know exactly what is going on with this cable. So on those diagrams that you look for, actually I'm going to pull it up here too, so we have it for everyone. SNES controller pinout. Huzzah. Go ahead and show you guys. So, like I said, it has 5 pins. The 5-volt pin is the one on the far end of the square end of the controller. The next 3 pins are the clock, latch, and data pins. Those are the ones that we are interested in order to get the input reader working. And the last one on the far end is the ground pin. Now here they're color coded with, white, blue, yellow, red, and brown. But if we go ahead and take a look at our cable here, we don't have those exact colors. We have black, yellow, green, red, and white. Now on the previous cable I went and tested. The black was the ground wire. The green was our 5-volt wire. The yellow was our clock wire. The white was our latch wire. And the red was the data wire. So we had, well, 1 matching wire. Okay. So now I'm wondering if we should test this one too, just to make sure that they built them the same. Because you never know. They could just slap, as long as they slap, the wires into 2 ports and they come out beeping the other end, I don't think they really care which one is which, but who knows. All right. So we stripped away about 1.5 inches of wire on that end. Yeah, about 1 inch, 1.5 inches on that end to expose our wires. We're only going to need to expose a little bit, maybe 1/2 inch on this end in order to get things connected. And we're not even going to use the full length of these short wires too, so if we mess up, we have some extras. And that's why I built the other one earlier this week, just to get a feel for it before I brought it to everyone here. Be careful while pushing pointy things in the direction of your hand. We could be cutting more than just cables tonight, and I don't think having live human blood on stream is allowed in the TOS. All right. I've already nicked the cable, so I'm just going to cut this end off, set it aside, and try again. You want to be careful when you're cutting these, that you don't cut into the wire sheathing inside of the cable. So those need to stay intact so they don't come into contact with each other and cause a short. So I know you can buy these online, all put together and stuff, but I have a knack, I guess, for doing things, you know, myself. I have a natural curiosity for these things. I want to see. I like to see the process. I like to try doing it myself. You know, if you give me two options of, you can buy this pre-made thing and have it ready to go, or you can spend time and energy and probably 20% more money when you're all said and done buying the tools you need to do it yourself. What would you do? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to choose do it myself. If I'm in a pinch and I don't have the time, then I'll probably pick buy it. But I like to do it myself most of the time. That's why all my PCs have been built myself from parts. Next keyboard I'd like to build myself. We did the Pico producers on stream a couple weeks back. All right, so we've exposed some more wires here on this end. We're good on that end. Woohoo. All right, so next step, we're going to put them into the tin. And that way we can... Oof, this is going to be this is a very snug fit. So I took a stab at what the drill size should be, and I guessed at 1/8 of an inch drill bit, and that was barely enough to fit it in. And I think I widened the hole a little bit with some sanding. Try the other one, see if the other hole is bigger first. You might need to go get a sanding tool for a hot minute here. Nope, these are a little small. See if we can open up the hole just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Very snug, which is good, because you don't want a wiggly waggly cable inside of your project. So I'm going to slide in a few inches of the cable so we have some room to move. I'm going to put a knot in the cable. You're maybe wondering, why are you doing that? It's to prevent pullout. We don't want the cable to pull out on us after we get it all put together. So when all is said and done, it's not going to be exactly a 6-foot cable, but it'll be long enough to get from your console to your computer, and then the cable can go from your computer to your hands. So I said the short end, the female end, the one that connects to the controller, that can go on that end. Ugh. There we go. Nice and snug. Let's see if I can get this hole opened up just a teeny tiny bit. It needs to be opened up. Oh. While we're working, anybody have any good weekend plans? We got a birthday party that we're throwing this weekend. Been a long year since we've been able to really have a birthday party. And we're keeping it small. We're just inviting parents. We've all had at least one shot. I just got my second shot on Monday, and surprisingly, I have felt fine. I have not really had any bad side effects from the second shot. The only thing I had was a sore arm for a couple days. So I'm just very, very thankful for that. And also thankful for everything that's been done to help bring us to this point where we can start to feel reasonably safe in public again. If you... Alright, so next I want to start stripping the sheathing off of the individual wires and bind them together and solder them together so they stay together. So these ones are so thin that these strippers aren't big enough to, or aren't small enough to take them off, take off the sheathing. So we are just going to use our fingernails, go down about half an inch, pinch real hard, and pull. That should pull off the sheathing without ripping out too many wires. These are stranded cables, so what they're made up of is instead of being a single solid wire, it's made up of a bunch of tiny copper strands that are all twisted together. So when somebody tells you, solid core versus stranded wire, now you know the difference. Stranded has a bunch of strands of wire inside of each of the sheathings, and a solid core wire is a single piece of copper. You'll find that, a solid core wire is a little bit harder to bend, but once you bend it, it keeps its shape better. Solid core wire is used a lot inside of wall construction, so you'll see wires in the electrical aisle at your local home improvement store that are solid core wire. They call them 12.2G or 12.3. That means they are 12 gauge. Gauge is how thick the wire is. The smaller the number, the better. There's actually a formula for it of like, such and such divided by an inch or something, or how many wires will fit inside of an inch conduit. I don't remember the exact formula to calculate a gauge, but the bigger the number, the smaller the wire. The smaller the number, the bigger the wire. So a 0 gauge wire is going to be much bigger than, I think these are 28 gauge wire. Almost as thin as network cable, which we could probably use network cable just fine to get to connect all these. Be hilarious. Just connect it to a hub. It'll all be good. It's all network packets, right? All right, so we've stripped our wires in our case here. So now we have exposed bare wires at the end. And now I want to say probably about the length of my finger. So it's about 3 or so inches. About half of these wires. This wire I want to take. I don't need it to be very long. I just need a short lead from these wires to the Arduino board. I guess technically I think this is my first time working with Arduino itself, or well, I mean, so the Pi Pico is supposed to be an Arduino-like board based on their own processor, so it's not exactly Arduino, but it is running in real time, as opposed to, say, your computer. Your computer is a scheduled OS, meaning things take turns to use the processor, with what's called interrupts. So I cut the 3 wires in half. We're going to set those aside. I'm going to take a quick trip over to my workshop and grab my multimeter just to make sure that we have the right wires and we're not accidentally blowing up our controller. So we will be right back. All right, I'm back. So this is a multimeter. A multimeter allows you to measure different electrical potentials. You can measure the voltage, the amperage, the resistance. You can actually, this one actually lets you measure battery health. You can measure the health of a 1.5 or 9 volt battery. That's pretty handy. It also has a hold button to hold the display, so you don't have to keep it connected while you're working. And it also has a continuity tester. Right there is a continuity symbol. It just tests whether or not things are connected. And let's see if I can get this to light up. So when 2 wires are connected, don't think you can hear that. Now you can hear that while my mic is talking. The beep means things are connected. So we just want to make sure that the wires that we think they are the wires that they say they are. So we're going to test that out. So we're going to go into the first pin here, and the first pin should be green. So we're going to take our green wire and touch it, and we get the beep. So we know that the green is the 5 volt wire. Now we're going to connect this to our second pin here. And I believe we said the yellow is our second pin, our clock pin. So we're going to touch this to the yellow wire without touching it to other wires. Get out of here, the white wire, please. Thank you. Beep, beep, beep. We're good. All right. Third pin. This should be the white wire. We're going to touch the white wire. We got our beep. That means that's good. And our fourth wire is the red wire. We'll touch the red wire. We get our beep. We're good. And then the last wire, the 7th wire, is the black wire. And we're going to test that one. And we're good. So they didn't change the wiring on me, which is good to know. Turn that off. And now we can continue. So I know it seems kind of silly that we're going to cut these and then put them right back together. But if we want to put it inside the case, that's what we're going to need to do. Now, you don't have to put it inside of a case. You could easily, just take off the sheathing and find the 3 wires that you need and hook directly onto those without going into any board or any case whatsoever. But I wanted to make it look nice, at least when it's all said and done. So that's why I'm putting it inside of a case. So, all right. So if we reference back to the Nintendo Spy GitHub page. We're looking to put it on pins 3, SNES latch pin, pin 4, or pin 4 as the SNES data pin, and pin 6 is the SNES clock pin. So we have our 3 wires. We're going to strip a little bit off of each end of the wire. Usually that's about half an inch is good. So take the wire strippers and strip off half an inch of sheathing. With the stranded core wires, what you want to do is you want to take your fingers, pinch it, and twist it. You want to twist those wires together so that way they don't splay out and make it irritating to put things together or put it into a hole. So to use the wire strippers like these, it's very easy. You just find the right gauge that the sheathing fits into. You want it maybe a little snug because you want the strippers to cut into the plastic sheathing on the outside. And you squeeze it and give it a tug and come on. And pull. And off comes the sheathing and out comes the wire. If you need a link to the GitHub page, go ahead and type info into the chat, and Moobot will help you out with a link to the page with all the other information you'll need to know. All right, so that's one wire. Go ahead and get the second wire stripped and red and yellow wire stripped, and we'll get them connected to our Arduino board first. So that way we can remember which is clock, data, and latch. All right, twist those wires together, strip the other end. Now, these aren't the only kind of wire strippers out there. There's other kinds out there. There are some that will kind of semi-automatically strip the wire for you. You'll stick the wire into the jaws like a sideways, and they'll have little teeth that come down on each side. One will pinch, one will have the cutter, and as you squeeze them, they'll grip down and pull it apart and just kind of rip the stripping right off for you. Those are pretty nice. These ones are the good old-fashioned manual strippers here. Oh, that's the problem sometimes of having short wires to strip, is that you can't get a good grip on them to pull. That's always a worry. Sometimes you do. Sometimes the sheathing comes right off. Sometimes it doesn't. Alright, put the garbage away. Here's where our helping hands and our soldering iron comes in. So if you take a look at the top of the board, you're going to notice some numbers along the top. I don't know if I can get close enough with that. Yep. Okay, so we want to go into that 3 and 4 pin, and then the 6 pin. And I want to have these side by side so I can remember which is which. So forgive me a second while I get these lined up. Okay, now I can see the two pictures side by side. All right, so first we're going to be putting the blue wire into pin number 6. So that is 6. That is here. I'm going to put the short end in there. So, yeah, another reason why you want to twist them together is so that way they stay together. So, use your helping hands to hold it for you. Another tip I've learned is to bend it a little bit. If you bend the wire, it helps to hold it in place while you solder it. So when you solder, you want to touch the 2 pieces that you'll be bonding to warm them up, and then apply your solder to the warmed up pieces. If you touch your soldering iron directly to the solder, you're just going to get solder onto your soldering iron, and the 2 cold pieces that you're trying to put together, they're not going to take the solder at all, and they're just going to sit there and do nothing. So that's all put together. Boom. Nip off the extra. You want to leave a little bit left. You don't want to take it all the way off. Let's see if I can get a good picture for you there. Come on, come into focus. Yep, you want to have a little mound on top once you're done. Cut off too much, it won't have anything to hold on to, and your wire will just pull right out of the board. And you don't want that. All right, next is data pin into pin number 4. Oh. So this is why you need to pay attention. I just put this into pin 5. So we need to take this out and put it back into pin 6. So to desolder a wire out of a hole, pull on the wire while touching the iron to the board, and it should just melt and come right out. Come on. Ow. Oh, it's very hot. Melt the solder, please. Melt the solder and not my hand, please. Come on. There we go. Okay. Wire out. So, lesson learned. Double check. Check and double check. So, now I have a very small amount of solder left. That's okay. A very small amount of wire left to put this together. That's okay. We'll still get it. Alright. Remember to touch the 2 things and then touch your solder to the warmed up pieces. Just need a little bit, don't need a lot. Okay. All fixed. No harm, no foul. Now we have it in the right pin slot. Okie doke. Now we want to put our red wire into pin number 4. And we know which one that is because pin 5 is now filled with solder. All right, I am almost ready to go find that other hand for helping because this is a little silly. All right. Touch our 2 things. Put on a piece of solder. A little bit goes a long ways. And we're all done. Cut off the excess. Cut off the end of the wire here. And go, oh no, we got some solder into pin 3 somehow. Wonderful. So we're going to have a heck of a time getting that in there. Okay. No worries, no frets. It's a little more complicated to put a wire into a hole that already has solder on it. To do so, you have to press the wire into the hole from behind while touching the hole. And that can help get the solder all nice and melted while you're putting... Oh, let me wash this tip off. There we go. Then you just want to put a little bit more solder on there to get it all nice and attached. Okay. Cool. All set. All right. Hopefully we're not going to ruin the Arduino board much more tonight. We got our 3 wires. They're connected pretty solidly. We just need to trim the end of the yellow wire. Remember, we don't want to cut it all the way down to the board. We want to leave a little bit of nub on the end, so that way you have something for it to grip on. So, come on. Autofocus, please. There we go. So, yeah, you can see it, even though it's a little blurry. Just a little bit of nubbin for it to hold on to. Alrighty. That's the hard part, is getting it into the board. The easy part is getting the wires together. So, we want to bring our wires together. Let's go ahead and get our 2 power wires done first. So that's green, our 5 volt, and black, the ground. To solder 2 wires together, it's very, very easy. You'll want to put the 2 wires together, or 3, or 4. You want to put them together, so that way their ends are sticking out the same way. And you want to twist them together, with the whole pinch and twist technique. So they're wound around each other. That lets them have good contact at first. Then I like to use a helping hand to hold on to it while I get the solder and soldering iron. So as soon as this thing decides to cooperate, there we go. Put the board over there so I don't ruin it. Very simply, take your soldering iron, you put the tip on the underside of the wire to let it warm up, and then touch the solder to the tip and wires and let it flow onto the wires. It should soak into the wires and soak in between the wires, and when it cools down and solidifies, the wires will be bonded together. And you won't have to worry about them coming apart. We're going to do the same thing with our black wire here. We're going to get these separated. There we go. So another thing I got here, this is heat shrink tube. It's a rubber tube that, when heat is applied to it, shrinks. It is commonly used for electrical wiring. You slide it over the electrical wire. Well, first trim to fit, then you slide it over what you want to cover up, and then apply heat, and it'll shrink over the tube, or the tube will shrink over the wire and grab onto it, because it shrinks to about a third of its original size. So it's good for covering up exposed wires like this that you're soldering together. Exposed wires that you are capping off. That is the general use for it. All right. I think this time I'm not going to use the helping hands and just rely on gravity. Mostly because I noticed the helping hands are pinching the wire sheathing. And that is putting some holes in there that I am not comfortable with. So you want to apply the soldering iron for a couple seconds just to let it heat up the wiring. Then touch the solder to the wires itself and let the solder flow over the wires. The rosin inside is of the solder core. The rosin core inside of the solder that you have, that is what's called flux. Flux is the material that allows two different metals to bond to each other while they're being heated. It can come in a powder. Ow, it's sharp. Ow, sharp. Careful of sharp points. They hurt. Solder will come in either a liquid form or a solid powder form. Common for soldering applications is you'll get a wheel of solder that has the rosin flux inside of it. That's what you're looking for, rosin core. Now, I said this one is 60-40 lead and tin. That is probably the most common kind. You can also find lead-free that is made of either pure tin or sometimes silver. And those will be a little bit more expensive, and they also do require a little bit more heat in order to melt onto the device. So, or melts into whatever project you're working on. So, heat shrink tube, very simple. You cut off a small section that you need. You slide it over the wires you want to put together. I'm going to do two at once here. So that way I'm just going to trim this. You can always trim these once you're done soldering them together, just to get kind of a shorter form. So I'm going to make sure I got enough to cover the wires and get onto their sheathing a little bit, just to make sure I don't have any exposed wires. So once you have the heat shrink tube on, get a little bit of heat, and this can either be in the form of a lighter, or if you have a heat gun or a hair dryer, that works too. So as you apply the heat, the tube shrinks, and now the tube is shrunk onto the wires, and it won't come off. So you can see right here, boop, 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 boop. Give it a tug. Tube's not coming off. Oh, that one's a little melty. They are made of rubber. They will melt if you apply too much heat, so just beware. They don't need too much heat to shrink. Hair dryer will work, but I'm trying to be quiet, so. So those are our first two wires, the power and the ground. So, like I said, you want to make sure things work. So we have our continuity tester, our multimeter. We're going to turn it to continuity. We're going to place our first pin. So these ones are a little neat. They have little covers, so you can either give it a little poke here, or you can slide that off so you can have a much more exposed pin. Yep, works. We're going to put one into the 5-volt pin here, and we're going to touch the 5-volt pin on this end, and beep. We're good. We have good continuity between those two. And we'll try the ground. Beep. That's good. We have good continuity. That means we're all good. I wanted to leave it here so that way you can see the numbers do change as I connect them. So, you know, it sends a little bit of pulse. So I can touch them right here. I don't have any continuity. I think if I give myself a little bit of, no, okay. Yeah, I have no I don't have enough continuity. I have too much resistance in my skin to get this to trigger. But oh, there we go. Pardon me. All right. All right, next. We gotta connect this guy. This little bad boy to this thing. So thankfully, the red matches the red. And we know that the other two don't match, so we know the yellow doesn't match the yellow, which means we know that the yellow will be the blue, and the white will be the yellow. And we don't have to play the guessing game anymore. So I'm just going to take a quick moment here. I'm going to twist these wires together. Ta-da! All right. All right, so, how do we want to do this first? I think then we should go this order. So we'll do the white and yellow first. So we get our white wire from this side, our white wire from this side. Pick those together. Now, when you put them together, you kind of want to lined up where the sheathing ends. So you have a nice little uniformity there. And then twist all three of them together. Like that. Yeah. Now, twisting all together not only helps with the connectivity, but also, you know, keeps them together while you're getting your soldering iron and solder out to bind them more permanently. So I'm going to touch the tip to the wires, let it go for a few seconds so they heat up. Then gently apply the solder to the wire itself and let it melt into the wires. So you just need a little bit because the wires are already bound together. You know, they're not going to have much room for the solder to take in, but the solder will flow into the tiny gaps in between the wires. So, and then we can take our little flesh snips, cut the end off, cut the very end off to make it nice and flush at the end. We can take our heat shrink tube, measure out how much we need. We don't need that much, which is good because I don't want to have to go back and get more out of the back room. So I think we have just enough left for the other two wires too. And then when all is said and done, I have this larger heat shrink tube that we can put over the whole kit and caboodle to make sure they're all nice and together, and we're not relying on the strength of the individual wires to keep it together. So just needs a little bit of heat to get it to shrink nice and good. That's it. There, that's one wire connected. All right, we'll do the red next. That's in order. Get our red wires together. Get our third red wire. Get all the sheathing to line up and twist them together. Yeah, I like this way better. The other one, I tried doing it, splicing together like this, and two wires and one wire like this, and that was just a disaster, really. Doing it them all facing the same way, much easier, and it's all going to be hidden inside the tin anyway, so it'll be fine, just fine, just fine. So if you have trouble with transferring heat from your soldering iron to a device, to a wire, or to a piece of work, what you can do is place a little bit of solder onto the tip of your soldering iron, and that helps transfer heat to your project. All right, so yikes, that is real close. What we're gonna do, we're gonna cut this bit in half. Where's half? That half? That's about half. We're gonna cut that in half. Then we're gonna measure how much we need for, we only just need to take off just a teeny bit. So we're gonna take off a teeny bit of the red wire here. Slap on the heat shrink. You want to make sure when you're putting on your heat shrink tube that it's not just covering the wires, but it goes down onto the sheathing just a little bit. The point is to grab onto the sheathing so that it's not just on the wires where the wires it can slip off, but if it's on the sheathing, it's rubber to rubber contact. It has a lot more traction, gription. I've heard the word gription used before. I don't think I've ever seen that in a dictionary, but I am guessing it's the friction of grip, or gription. But yes, the rubber on rubber presents a lot more friction than the rubber on metal, and keeps the heat shrink from sliding off. So apply a little bit of solder to the tip of the iron, apply the iron to the wire, and apply the solder to the wire. And that's it. Boom. I think that's all the soldering that we're doing tonight. So I'm going to unplug the soldering iron so it can start to cool down. And hopefully it won't be like last time where I need it over and over again. All right, how much do we need just to trim off just a little bit for this one too? So we trim off a little bit of the end. And we slide on. Oh, come on. I want it to slide over the sheathing too. Get on there, please. Thank you. You don't want it, and you want to make sure you don't leave the wire exposed out of the other end. So you want to make sure it is both on the sheathing and you don't have the wire tip exposed out the other end. That's already been shrunk. So we get these two and shrink these. So they don't need a lot of heat to shrink. Lighter will be enough for a couple waves past it. And now you have your heat shrink tube all shrunk around it. We just want to double check with our continuity tester, make sure we have everything all nice and connected. There, you can see it. Good. Okay. Let's go pin 2 here with pin 2 on this end. And Beep, we're good. Pin 3 on this end. And pin 3 on this end. Beep, we're good. And last but not least, pin 4 and pin 4. Beep, we're good. Awesome. That's it. It's put together. I mean, electronically, it's all put together. Next, I want to take the large heat shrink and put them all over it in one big heat shrink tube. About yay big. So I want it a little bit bigger. This would be better if I had bigger scissors than just side snips. Flush snips. Alright. Make it all nice and even. We're going to slide the heat shrink tube over all the wires at once. Okay. And then take our magic lighter and just wave it back and forth slowly. Well, quickly. We don't want to wave it too much. We don't want to burn it up. And you can see that it's shrinking a little bit. The big ones take a little bit longer because they have a lot more shrinking potential. I don't know. A lot more material to shrink. So they take a little bit longer to shrink than the other ones. Alrighty. Boom. It's a little hot to the touch. No duh, dummy, you just put it on fire. Okay. So that would help to keep these all nice and bundled together. Cool. Alright. We don't need that anymore. We're good with that, right? Yeah, we're good with that. Okay. We didn't break things. Huzzah. Oh. Excuse me. Hold on just a second. I'm just making sure things are working just fine. All right. Let's see here. All right, so the next part is to put this into the tin. So we don't need our snips anymore. We don't need our wire strippers. We don't need our lighter. Don't need our helping hands. We need our Sugru though. So the idea that I had behind this was the Sugru. In the past, I've used it not just as like a little moldable bonding, repair tool. I've used it to make feet for keyboards. I've used it to, cover up a hole. I've used it to repair wires. They have lots of uses that they show off on their site. Oh, we do have some gloves upstairs, so I'm gonna go grab some gloves, use the restroom, and we're gonna take a short little break here. So we'll be right back. Hey, we're back. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry about that. So I got some nitrile gloves to protect my hands while we use the Sugru putty. So let me get these put on here. If you're wondering what nitrile gloves are, they're like your latex gloves, but they're a little bit more advanced. They have a different. They're made out of a different material than latex. So if you have an allergy to latex gloves and you want to have some sort of hand protection, you know, nitrile is the way to go. There's also vinyl gloves, but the vinyl gloves aren't really the stretchy. You know, nitrile I've found is more stretchy than your typical latex glove if you can't, or vinyl glove if you can't have latex. So these come in packages. They say that you should be using them within like 3 months of receiving them. They have a best buy date on their package. Well, yeah, this one says 8/20/2022, so maybe they've changed their formula a bit. But when I first got these, they were use within 3 months or 6 months. If you want it to last a little bit longer than 6 months, put it in the fridge. So first thing you want to do is to get it more pliable is to fold it, knead it into each other so you can make it into a workable form. Make sure it's nice and even. So sometimes from the factory, the material isn't perfectly blended. So folding over itself a few times helps to work the product into itself, and it warms it up, makes it nice and pliable for you. So what we're just going to do is we're going to make a simple little plop of glue here. We are going to set that aside for a second. We're going to pull our cables the rest of the way through here. No, not the rest of the way through. We're going to pull our cables back out. This one might be not stripping, but scraping the cable as I pull it out because of how tiny the hole is. Same here. Yep, it's scratching the cable, but that's okay. It's just cable sheathing. We're fine. Fine, just fine. All right. So we have our cable pulled all the way out. That's why we have the nuts in the cable, is so that the cable doesn't get pulled all the way out, and that we're not relying on this to keep the cable in there. Get all that rubber dust out. Clean the surface, make sure it's clean of debris and material. Clean this off, make sure it's free of debris and material. Now this is electrically insulative, so it does not conduct electricity, but it is not guaranteed for things higher than 24 volt. So I wouldn't try putting this in your electrical socket to keep it from, keep wires from touching. So we'll just slap it on there, and then we'll place the Arduino board into the tin, lined up with the hole that I've already cut out for the USB hole, or for the USB port. Just kind of press it in, and as you press it in, it gets into all the little crevices, all little micro pores inside of the metal. And this should keep the board there. There we go. I just want to press it in, make sure it's all nice and snug in there. And you want to make sure that the port is visible and that you can connect a USB cable to it. Go ahead and grab our USB cable from our other one and make sure our USB port can connect. Feels like a good connection. Of course, you also want to be careful that you don't press too hard and you break anything on your board. That would be terrible. You get all this all the way to here and then you break a resistor or something on your board. So, don't use a hammer. Okay, so we have this nice and pressed in here. It is lined up with the hole. And yeah, I think we are good to go here. We just need to let this cure for a little bit. And it will be good. And solid. So what we can do is we can test it. Make sure it works. So allow me to get my Nintendo controller over here. Oh. All right. So this is the port from my Nintendo controller. We're going to connect it to the female end. We're going to connect the male end into our Super Nintendo device. Hey, thanks for the follow. Glad you're enjoying the content. If you're new here, I am not just a video game, but I also try to help educate as I play video games. Tonight, if you are just joining us, we are building a Super Nintendo input reader that will take the inputs that you press on your controller and show them on your computer screen. Commonly used by other streamers to show their channel what inputs they're pressing on their controller. So we just got done wiring the extension cable to our Arduino board. We put the Arduino board into a case with some Sugru putty. And there it is, the Sugru putty. Put that case aside, and yeah, I don't know if you can see, I do have a little bit of black on the fingertips from the putty, so. All right, so we have that connected to the Pi. We have that connected to, not to the Pi. We have that connected to the controller, to the console. We're going to take our USB cable from our computer here, and we are going to connect it to the Arduino. All right, you can see green light lights up. That's already seen. Let's head on over to our Nintendo Spy here. And see if it comes up as a port. Aha, it does, COM5. So once you get this all connected and you connect it to your computer, you'll want to add the drivers from the Arduino site to the device. It will show up in Device Manager as a item with a yellow question mark. What you'll do is right click on that, say, update driver, point it at the folder of the drivers that you downloaded, the IDE zip file that you downloaded, and it will recognize that and put in and assign the driver to it. So don't need the gloves anymore. But now we have the Nintendo Spy window here. So Nintendo Spy, I'm saying it's a Super Nintendo controller, and it's on the COM5. We'll just use minimalist. We'll go with minimalist gray. So let me just switch windows here. Nintendo Spy, no, not view window. There we go. Okay, so this is the Nintendo Spy window once it's all set up. So we'll turn our console on. And let me move this out of the way. You can see the Arduino start to blink. That means it's reading data from the console. And when I press the button on the controller, you can see it light up on the screen. Let me turn on my monitor so I know what buttons I'm pressing so I don't accidentally erase everything. All right. Are we turning on? Here we are. Okay. So I just want to make sure that I don't accidentally press something. So you can see as I press the X and Y buttons, the X and Y buttons light up. If I press start or select, those light up. The shoulder buttons, they'll light up. D-pad lights up. B and A light up. So that's how we know it's all working. Now, I'm using Super NT as my console, a Nintendo clone, and I noticed the other day that there was a lot of flashing on my screen as I used the console between levels of Super Mario. And I was a little curious about that at first, and after stream I went and looked around for it and found that because the Super NT is looking for hotkeys or a key combination of like the start and down when you're inside of a game, or select and down when you're inside of a game, that it's constantly trying to pull the controller for what button you're pressing, even if the game isn't looking for button inputs. So if you're in between lives or starting a level on a Super Mario, you know, you're gonna see a bunch of flashing if you're holding down buttons, because it's going around the controller to check to see, hey, are things being pressed? So yeah, that's it. That's the Super Nintendo input reader. We've got it all put together. We tested it. It's working. It's all said and done. So yeah, turn the console off. The read-write light goes, the RX goes off because it's no longer checking. I think the Sucru is going to work really well. And we have a nice little case that it resides in, so pardon me. And we have the nice little case that it resides in. So, you know, it looks all nice and fancy, and it doesn't look like an ugly bunch of wires all stuck together when it's all said and done. So, that's it. That took us, what, an hour and a half? Wow. That's pretty quick. I would say not even, because we spent a few minutes getting tools together, and we spent a couple minutes talking at the beginning of the stream. So yeah, less than an hour and a half for, you know, input reader number 2. Alrighty. So that's all said and done. What should we do next? I mean, that's kind of what I had. That's kind of all I had planned for the stream tonight, was building this. I didn't, you know, it took me 3 hours to build the first one. I didn't know if it would take me 3 hours to build the second one, but that was much faster now that, well, that I got everything all figured out the first time. Yeah. I like it. Looks pretty good. I mean, maybe I want to make sure the USB port's lined up there nice and good. Go. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this looks professional, doesn't it? I like it. You know, and if you ever need to open it up and, you know, you say you want to work it for like a NES controller, you know, you just open it up, pick a crack at the wires, and put an NES controller cable on there. I thought about some other ways to do it, like, cracking open the controller itself and putting it directly inside the controller and having a little USB port on the side here. That the controller talks directly, like, oh, look, I'm going to read it directly from the controller. But these are so rare now, I guess, because a lot of collectors, a lot of gamers are snatching these up in wherever they can get them, online, local game, retro game stores. They're snatching these up because the rubbers, the parts that go underneath the buttons, they're starting to degrade on them, and they use them a lot. So they try to find, less worn down rubbers, so that way the inputs feel better. Oh, and see, that's why I took off my mouse pad, my desk pad, but I don't want to get the solder on it. Suddenly burn it. Okay. All right. I think we should do something else. Play a game. What should we play? I'm thinking it's been a hot minute since we played Hades. Hades is fun. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna send you over to BRB while I get things cleaned up around here and get us ready for Hades. So I'm gonna go ahead and update our stream info. SNES input creator done. Turning up the heat. Hades. Switch our category. Hades. Casual. And no. All right, switching over our okay, there. It's not updating my tags. At least not that I can see. That's weird. All right, so we got our things done. We're gonna send you over to BRB. I'm gonna get stuff cleaned up a little bit around here, and we're gonna come back with some Hades.